Let's have a look at the oral assessment together. In the first part of this oral assessment, we're simply interested in the position of the accent in individual words. And that's a simple problem. The task during the assessment was simply to find the position of the accent, the accentuated syllable of the words in the right-hand column, which are related to words in the left-hand column. Well, let's explain each one, the position of the accent in each one. Why do we pronounce controversy? Well, we don't actually have only that pronunciation. We also have controversy, but I wouldn't recommend that you pronounce the word that way in Canada or the United States. Why do both pronunciations exist? Well, in the Americas, there are words like television and hypocrite and others, which are interpreted as compounds, contro and versi. And so compound pronunciation applies. Elsewhere, this word is not analyzed as a compound. It's analyzed as a word taking this abstract suffix. That suffix is amongst those that cause the accent to come on the second syllable before. That's why you will hear in this great, big, wide world, you will hear people pronounce controversy and television, but you won't say television in the United States or Canada. Tele and vision are interpreted as together, compounded. Same for controversy. The related word, the related adjective controversial, as this ending here, that suffix connected with I, the connecting vowel I, which is neither part of the root word nor part of the suffix itself. And the rule is simple. Always put the accent before the connecting vowel I. Minimal. Minimalism. It would take a long time to explain why we say minimal. But what's interesting is that this here, ISM is not composed of a linking vowel. That I is not a linking vowel. So ISM is the suffix. It's neutral, and this does not change positions. Minimalism. To the verb devote, we can add the obviously French ending, French suffix double E, which carries the accent. That's in the category of suffixes which must carry the accent. So the person who is devoted to something is a devotee. Relaxation, again, because this suffix is connected to the root, the connecting vowel, I, relaxation. Ethics. Usually we pronounce, let's remove this. Usually we pronounce unethical. Unethical. Because the prefix is usually neutral, and this suffix here is connected with this vowel. But we can sometimes accentuate the prefix when there's a situation of contrast, as in this sentence. Is this ethical or unethical? Otherwise, we do not accentuate the prefix. Is the verb to coincide. This ending in verbs usually takes the accent. This ending here, E-N-T-A-L, ento, usually takes the accent itself. So coincide, the accent moves from here to here. Coincide, coincidental. Intricate. We recognize this ending. Causes the accent to come in the second syllable before itself. Here, this ending, ACY, 2 syllables, but it has 2 syllables, but it counts as syllable 0 or ground 0 if you like. It's the suffix. So it isn't counted. This is 1 and this is 2. So ATE and suffix ACY, they belong to the same family and follow the same rule. Temporary. This ending here, ARY, has 2 syllables, but it counts again as ground 0. And this is the first syllable before it. And here is the second syllable before it. So you know which family this one belongs to. It's like the word necessary, or the words intricate and intricacy. Now the question is, what happened over here? Well, we know the ly for making certain Anglo-Saxon adjectives and many, many Anglo-Saxon type adverbs is neutral. It does not in itself cause the accent to move around. However, for this word, it is connected to the root with the connecting vowel I. And so the accent must move here. So that gives us the contrast. Temporary, temporarily. Unify. This ending here, obviously from French, you recognize it certainly, generally causes the accent to come 2 syllables before. Generally, but that's not an absolute rule. At any rate, a more regular rule, which is almost unexceptionable, is the use of the connecting vowel I. So of course you have reunification. Again, notice that the suffix is basically neutral. Unify, reunify. You could do that as well. Oh, beautiful. Hurry up. There. Unify. Reunify. It's neutral. Usually, unless there's contrast. Unify. Reunify. Reunification. For the usual reason. Why do we pronounce incoherent? Why don't we pronounce coherent? Because we know that ENT usually causes the accent to come 2 syllables before. For this word, it doesn't. For the moment, think of it as an exception. Later, perhaps we'll deepen this issue. But for the moment, just take it as such. Coherent. Now, this word here, incoherently, the prefix is neutral, and the suffix is totally neutral. There's no linking vowel. Coherent, incoherent, incoherently. Anticipation, for the usual reason that you certainly recognize. Anticipate, also for a reason which you should know by now. Anticipation, anticipate. And finally, volunteer. This suffix here is another suffix which attracts the accent to itself, the dictionary accent. Volunteer. Involuntarily is pronounced this way because, well, the prefix is neutral. The adverbial ending is neutral, but the adverbial ending is connected to the root word with the connecting vowel I. And so the accent must go here. Volunteer. Involuntarily. Very well. Let's have a look now at something which is even more fun. The position of the extra accent in the construction. We're studying three constructions: X particle Y, modification, and compounding. Each of these three has its own specific accentuation pattern or configuration. This is something more than just the dictionary accent. This is a pattern which is superimposed on top of the dictionary accent. Usually, the dictionary accent stays where it is supposed to be, and this other pattern is superimposed or placed over it. Now, in very complex examples, things can happen. The dictionary accent can be forced down or repressed or even removed. But we have simple examples. In our assessment here, we're using simple examples. Which construction is this? X particle Y. Middle, low, high. So note this is the particle and it's low. Middle, low, high. This one's middle. And this is high. To indicate high, I'm going to use the boldface. And just to make it really clear, I'll even put the italics. The article the, well, what's the general rule in English for the basic dictionary accent of every word? The general rule is that every word in English with a definition, with a meaning, with semantic content, with sometimes pragmatic or dramatic content. Let's say dramatic, that's probably easier to understand here. Every such word will have one and only one accentuated syllable. If the word itself is composed of just one syllable, that word will be accentuated in the utterance, in your sentence. Now, the article the is not a word that you can explain with the dictionary definition. Well, certainly not an easy one. It's not considered to have intrinsic semantic content. It could have dramatic or pragmatic content in a context. If, for example, we say something like, say, are you Samuel Champlain? Is that your name? Are you the Samuel Champlain? Okay, I think you know what I mean by that, because you do the same thing in French and Spanish, exactly the same thing. So you see here, the King of France, there's no reason to accentuate the article the. So I'm going to mark it as low. So how do we read this? The King of France. What's this construction? This construction is about a barber who is bald. Well, dictionary accent, go here, barber, and of course this word here, bald, has its own accent. It's one syllable, but in a sentence it has its own accent. Now what pattern do we superimpose on top of it? We say that this will be lower than this. And we'll actually add the accent, the extra accent, to the syllable that's already accentuated. So let's make it high and make this one low. The King of France had his bald barber check his, what now? This is a compound. So let's explain something about compounds. In English, we have a lot of words, very generic words like spot, for example, or course, teacher, student, class, gimmick, machine, device, and there are others. And we will have an adjective appearing with them, but it's not a modification structure, because when we say bald spot, we're not just referring to a spot, a place, an area, which somehow is bald. That's not what the expression means anymore. We use this expression, bald spot, which looks like a modification construction. We use it to refer to something very specific. So these two words have become compounded into one word. A bald spot is an area on your head where there's no hair left. That's a bald spot. It's a compound. So we'll give it compound pronunciation, like this. The sentence, which ultimately you should be able to record correctly, I mean with the correct sounds, the correct accents and everything, would have to be analyzed first like this. Now you know how to do that. And then you read it all together. That's what you will do later. So the King of France had his bald barber check his bald spot. Right. How about the second one? What are these? What kind of construction is this? This construction is not simply about stars who are made out of rock. That would be a modification. These two words appear together, and star has become one of those generic words I was just talking about. And so this is compounded. Rock stars. Rock stars. There you go. So many rock stars have had what kind of starts? Difficult ones, rocky ones. Rocky as in French you might say caouteux. So this here is a word that's modified by this adjective here. So this word will be higher, not lower. And this word will be lower. That is to say, the general pattern will be lower. But the word itself will sound something like this. Middle, low. Because as you know, the accent, the lexical accent is there. So if I speak very slowly, you will hear something like rocky starts. That's unusual in normal speed. In normal speed, we'll say something like, many rock stars have had rocky starts. I don't think you can hear any difference in the word rocky. Let's look at the X particle Y construction here. Well, this one's complicated because this here is X particle Y, and this here, these here are two modifiers modifying the same construction. Well, let's start with the basic construction. So this would be middle, low, high, right? So middle, low, and high. World of rock, middle, low, high. So what do you do with these two? Well, you've got a special problem. In English, we don't like accents that are, let's say, 3 in a row, low, middle, high, or 3 in a row, high, middle, low. We can't do that. Sometimes we can have two in a row that are middle. That's acceptable. Three in a row, middle, is possible, but it's a bit unusual. We like to have a variation from word to word for the height of the syllable, the accentuated syllable. So we would probably have here something like wild, mid, wild, low, or mid, and then of course, world of rock. So in my pronunciation, that would give you, here, let's do this. Let's put this inside where it belongs. That's a little bit more coherent. So many rock stars have had rocky starts in the wild, wild world of rock. Take that at speed. You have to be able to do this. You have to be able to analyze an entire sentence like this and then read not just the constructions, but the entire sentence after analysis. It works. It works. After a while, you'll do this automatically without using your computer or without writing on a paper. You'll do this automatically. That comes later. But what should this sound like? Okay, very slowly first. Many rock stars have had rocky starts in the wild, wild world of rock. V is also low, okay? How about if we do it at speed? At speed, many rock stars have had rocky starts in the wild, wild world of rock. All right. Let's look at something else now. When I read this during the assessment, I pronounced middle, low, and high, like this. In other words, this here is not accentuated in the basic lexical entry. You don't say teacher, nor do you say teacher. It has to be teacher. That's the dictionary accent. And this pattern is superimposed on top of that with the basic lexical accent of German. It's also, let's say, middle low, German, teacher, middle low, middle low. But if you put them together, this must generally be lower than this. And this is how I'm indicating it. German teacher. Which construction do you suppose that is? A German teacher is a teacher who is German. That teacher may or may not teach German. That person may not be a teacher of German. It's a German teacher. So those are two words, German and teacher. If you wanted to say a teacher of German, that teacher could be from anywhere, German or Irish or Canadian or anything, then you would have a compound. This word teacher would, of course, be one of those generic words I was talking about. And German would be the first member of the compound. But that's not what you heard in the classroom. What you heard was a German teacher. So now you have to choose. Now you have to choose the context, which is consistent with what you heard. So my crazy sister has a new teacher from Germany, a teacher who is German, versus my crazy sister has a new teacher for her German language course. In other words, she has a new teacher of German. Well, a teacher of German is a German teacher. A teacher from Germany is a German teacher. So this, of course, A would be your answer. I'm sorry, I don't know what's happening with my... Oh, well. You got it? So this here is consistent with this here, but it's quite incompatible with this. Totally incompatible. Different meaning altogether. All right. 4 was about tag questions. So we have discussed the accent, the lexical accent, or the dictionary accent, the accentuated syllable in each individual word. And then we discussed the configurations or accentuation patterns that are superimposed over constructions. Now we're going to talk a little bit about the accent that applies to clauses or parts of sentences. So what you heard in class here was rising. This was rising. Let's see, we can indicate it like this maybe. The poodle has had her fur trimmed today, hasn't she? Well, to me that sounds like impatience, but in context it could also have been amusement. B, what you heard in class was, you really and truly do love your poodle, don't you? Falling intonation on the tag. Let's indicate it like this. Like this. I'm exaggerating a lot here. There. You really and truly do love your poodle, don't you? Well, to be fair, if I pronounce it the way I just did, with that tone of voice, it sounds like amusement. But it could also be impatience. For example, you really and truly do love your poodle, don't you? That sounds impatient. You really and truly do love your poodle, don't you? That sounds like amusement. So these were trick questions. Let's see if the other two are also trick questions in the same sense. What you heard in class was, you didn't leave the hamburger where the poodle could reach it, did you? Did you? Now, you didn't leave the hamburger where the poodle could reach it, did you? In my mind, that is only consistent with suspicion. It's a rising tag. Did you? You didn't leave the hamburger where the poodle could reach it, did you? And finally, what you heard in class for D was a falling tag. Where I left the hamburger doesn't really matter, does it? That shouldn't be growing concern. Maybe it could. Maybe it could in a very robust context, but it sounds more to me like a cynical observation. Where I left the hamburger doesn't really matter, does it? You don't care where I leave it. It doesn't matter where I put it. Sounds like a cynical observation. If I had a rising tag, listen now, check that quickly. Where I left the hamburger doesn't really matter, does it? Or does it? That sounds like growing concern. Look at this. We can do this. Where I left the hamburger doesn't really matter, does it? Or does it? Rising tag followed by a falling tag, just the tag, and connected like this. Where I left the hamburger doesn't really matter, does it? Or does it? This is something we do in English. We do lots of funny things in English with the tags. So these here, cynical observation versus suspicion, amusement, impatience, these were just contextual cues. And in fact, I had to accept everything in your answers. But these, of course, should have been quite clear. Well, I look forward to talking to you more about this in person and exploring real-life contexts in which you could have rising or falling tags with or without the negative in them, and with various compatible contexts.